Hello, welcome today to our webinar on using Khoros Care in this time of public health crisis. I am joined today by Allison Fashing. She is an award-winning customer service leader. Many of you have already spoken to her, but Allison is new to Khoros. She's on our customer experience team working as a consultant. She's been in this business for many, many years. She's helped transform how leading brands like Sprint engage with customers on digital channels. So she knows the space very well and is going to walk us through our playbook to share with you today. I'm also joined by Jenny Blanco. She's a senior strategist here at Khoros. She's helped manage customer service for dozens of companies with a particular focus on travel and hospitality and regulated brands. She's part of our strategic services team who is in the trenches with companies like you to provide thoughtful strategy and also to help with execution alongside your care teams. All right, so let's get into it. I think this is stating the obvious, but we know this is a challenging time for your business. This is an unprecedented time of crisis, and we're acutely aware of the additional challenges that you're currently facing. As consumers ourselves, we know if you're calling a 1-800 number, there's a long wait time and call volumes are spiking, and it's really hard for your call and your contact centers to handle that. We know that there's physical business locations that are closing. You may be asking your employees to be working remotely. For many of them, working remotely for the first time and working through the challenges of that remote working and absenteeism. We know that there's emotional stress and frustration that consumers are feeling, and also emotional stress for your agents and teams that are adapting to this whole new environment. And so ultimately, what that means for your business is this high call demand. You've got the fuel to the fire of this high demand for your help, for customer service, and also emotional stress, but low supply of people to handle that. So the demand for your team's help and support far outpaces the ability for your team to handle this from your immediate team and coworkers, as well as the folks over in your contact and your call center. And so you're struggling both from customer experiences, but also your agent experiences. So our goal here in this webinar is to help you with that. We want to help show you on this next slide how to work through the people problems and how to adjust your workflows and best practices to be incorporating automation and handling these volume spikes with limited capacity. How to think about accelerating digital first customer service to help support your call center that's going through this crisis. And also how to maximize value for remote working for both your agents and your supervisors. With that, I want to hand this over to Allison Fashing to take us through this playbook.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie, and thanks everyone for joining today. Some of you may know me from my previous role, as Katie mentioned, at Sprint, and I just wanted to share some of the top strategies that I would be recommending for Sprint or pretty much any other company that I ever worked with. I know you're probably already familiar with many of these, but we're hoping today to provide you with some new insights that you can apply under these unrivaled circumstances that we're faced with. You may have already reached out to your Khoros team, and I myself may have personally already spoken to you. And the number one question we repeatedly get is, where do I start? So in the midst of all the chaos, we asked some of our experts here at Khoros to create a playbook of recommendations that you could use during this and any other time of crisis. So with that influx of call volume and unprecedented spikes, you should stop and consider how best to operationalize your agents. Things like automation such as welcome responses or triage can help reduce volumes, while also thinking about adjusting your workflows and utilizing resources that can help improve your efficiencies. So let's talk about automation. There are simple welcome messages that you should consider before you start considering anything more advanced, right? There's a lot of advanced chatbot features that you can implement, but number one, let's get some automation, simple automation use cases out there. Most important thing you need to remember is to be transparent. So for example, when you're not staffed, make sure that you're setting engagement expectations for when you are available by responding with your business hours, or alternate solutions such as a link to your FAQs in your community. And remember, although customers may wish you to respond all the time, they will feel better knowing that you've heard them and that you will get back with them. Other things are like if you see a spike in your volume, you can let customers know that it may be a 5-minute wait time until an agent is available. And that way it can help avoid some of those frustrations that your customers are going to get. If you've already integrated your chatbot, which some of you have with Khoros Care, you may already be using our automation framework and current TAR APIs to provide this experience to your customers. If you do not have a chatbot yet, in light of the current crisis, we are accelerating our work on these simple welcome responses in our platform. When customers initiate a new private conversation with you, it will allow you to send an auto response, and you can base it on 3 things: language, work queues, and business hours. So let's talk a little bit about other types of chatbots, and probably outside of welcome responses, probably the next thing you should focus on is triage and FAQs. So think about, what are the questions that your customers are coming to your website, looking for, coming to your messaging, looking for. You can get all this data and kind of gather that together and think about ways that you can help your customers get the answers almost before they ask them, right? The key thing here is always make sure the chatbot is not getting in the way of the customer looking for help from an actual live person. If you've listened to one of our other webinars called Modernizing Your Contact Center, you would have heard me say the best intelligence isn't always artificial. So you have to remember that your bot is only as smart as the data you provide it and the use cases you create. There is nothing more frustrating than getting stuck in a bot loop when you already know your answer is going to require an agent to resolve. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about digital care. So you're probably, again, already seeing this influx of calls to your call center, and we know you could potentially, if not definitely, face capacity issues. Messaging really offers some real advantages to help your customers with the very least effort, and for your ability to answer the questions that those questions at an increasingly large scale in remote environments. The asynchronous nature of messaging managed through Khoros allows your agents to manage more concurrently and deflect expensive phone calls to messages to avoid overwhelming your phone lines and frustrating your customers while they're sitting on hold. So I would recommend focusing your efforts on unlocking those messaging channels. Identify the entry points that could become overwhelmed at first, and add a messaging entry point to that specific area and make it the priority. For example, consider your website. How visible is your phone number? If your calls are overloaded, you might want to replace that with a link to messaging. Contact us page is probably the biggest one. That's where customers are going to go to see how they can get in touch with you. Definitely look at adding your messaging channels and making those, promote them to the top of the page, so that's the first thing your customers see. Other ways are you can use your IVR, right? So your customers are calling in, they're on hold. You can redirect your customers to a messaging channel and say, hey, if you don't want to hold, please go to whichever messaging channel you choose them to go to. Or you can always send them to your online community if you have one to get to FAQs. Just remember that your staffing strategy should include the ability to throttle up and down as volumes change and your teams get more efficient. So if you're already promote and staff digital channels like chat or Facebook, adding these messaging channels are very simple. So let's talk a little bit about workflow and resourcing. So we've got a little checklist here. These are the things that you need to think of right off the top of your head, right? And I'm sure that most of you probably are. Update your tagging, your routing, your prioritization rules. Utilize your shared dashboards and set those notification alerts, and create customized response templates for your agents to use that are quick and easy. We'll talk a little bit more about each one of these in depth, but I want to also remind you that if you can take, if you're an admin, you can take advantage of those product coaching sessions, and that will help you to learn how to manage your increased volume. So let's talk about tagging. COVID-19, there's so many words flying around, but the majority of them are going to be COVID-19, coronavirus, pandemic. You'll recognize these quickly as they're coming into your queues. So create tags. So when those conversations come in, they get immediately tagged. But also make sure that you're looking for your like industry churn or escalation words. For example, depending on your industry, compensation or change fee, right? I want to cancel, or something's delayed. I need a refund. I want to reschedule. There's a long line. I have a long wait for this. There's so many more terms. They're all, a lot of them are just for your individual industry. So think about those and think about how you combine the two things together. So you have some that are strictly COVID and then some that are going to be more generic, but they may be related. People maybe wouldn't have said there's a long wait if it wasn't for the impacts that the pandemic is having. So just make sure that you're including those two things together so you're recognizing the conversations as they happen. Let's talk a little bit about routing and queues. So once you've got your tags together, then you want to create a work queue dedicated to that COVID-19 coronavirus with the necessary priority. For your company, it may be a high priority or it may just be a low priority. Some companies are going to have a really big impact because it impacts their industry directly and their customers directly. Others, it may just be a mention. So think about that and adjust your priorities so you know how they're routing and how quickly they're coming and which agents they're going to. It will help you to take a lot of that noise out of your normal everyday queues. Also consider creating some smart views. If you have teams that are new or dedicated to other queues and you just need a little bit of help to manage some of the chaos, you can set smart views up for those agents and teams. So let's talk about shared dashboards. So make sure that you're creating a COVID-19 focused dashboard, right? It's something that you can share across teams, across executives, and you can configure notifications so that you're always aware of what's going on, right? So it's top of mind. It should be up in your office on every other computer, so you're seeing what's going on, so you're monitoring it, making sure your supervisors have access to it, as well as your executives, because they'll probably be asking you every 5 minutes if they don't have a copy of, if they don't have visibility to some of these things. There are several widgets that we recommend including on the dashboard, like incoming conversations, online agents, queue backlog, several different types of TAR depending on what you're tracking, agent states, top tags, and CSAT and NPS. You want to see, be able to see how your customers are reacting to some of your responses. And there's several more that we'll include in a detailed playbook that we'll be sending out to you. So there's also a really cool new tool that I wish I would have had. It's called Live Workforce Utilization, and we've moved the launch date up to next week. So we know this is going to be really important, so we wanted to get that out quickly. So you should be seeing that next week. This is a new analytics widget, and it gives you insights to utilization percentages of teams and individual agents. So if your team is fully utilized and you still can't keep up with incoming volumes, you need to consider adding additional agents. And this will help you kind of keep an eye on that. Some of these widgets should be filtered to your specific coronavirus queues, right? So have a widget for coronavirus queues and then have a normal widget so you can kind of keep an eye overall and get the full picture of your care operations, because one may be more volatile than the other. So you just want to make sure that you're keeping an eye and that you're keeping your staff spread out as evenly as you should. Once your dashboard is created, like I said, share it with everybody across your team, the appropriate members, your organization, your executives. even leaders from other departments, because we all know that everybody's going to want to know what's going on. And remember, these dashboards you can share as freely as you want. Dashboard viewers will not count towards any of your seat licenses, so share as often as you like. Okay, let's get a little more into the details. So let's talk about alerts and notifications. These are some of the things that are very important. I know they've been lifesavers for me. So make sure that you're setting your TAR SLA alerts. So your track when you're missing your SLA targets in a specific time period. That will make sure that you're aware when things start to go off track a little bit. And volume alerts, you can configure your incoming post widget, and it will act as like an early warning indicator when your volumes cross your desired threshold. So figure out what that threshold is, set up your alerts, and you can do that in intervals of like 5, 10, 15, 30 minutes, or even an hour, just depending on your, how many conversations you have coming in. Response templates. Create new response templates specifically for this COVID coronavirus and share them with your agents. A lot of your answers are probably going to be the same. You're probably not going to be able to go into detail on some of these things. Some industries have more leeway and have more need for a specific answer to something, while others just need to say, hey, we're aware. So figure out where you fall and create those responses. And if you need multiple responses, you can create multiple responses. Just put them in a group and use like the COVID-19 header to kind of help you keep those organized. Moderation and Manage View. I'll just touch on this quickly. Most of you are probably familiar with Manage View. If not, you can always contact your Khoros representative. But Manage Views can be created and shared, and that will help. And you can have them target all the conversations about COVID-19, and you can get a better visibility. And there are some bulk actions you can take in the Manage View, tagging and things like that you can quickly do in a large group. And so that's probably something if you've got a lot of incoming to think about. Okay, let's make a little switch and go to messaging channels. So many of you already have messaging channels. I just want to touch on a few of them, high level, and just walk through a little review and talk a little bit about some of the things that you can do. I know most of you are familiar with Apple Business Chat to reach your iOS users, WhatsApp to reach your international users, Facebook Messenger. The largest percentage of your customers probably have this and probably use this more often than some of them would like to. You also have may have your owned chat, branded messenger, right? So you may already have that set up for you on your website and or your mobile. All of these messaging channels can be used on your website. You can link them. You can put a link on your website, a bubble on your website. You can add them into your mobile experience, right? So these are really good ways to get in front of your customer quickly, and it's what they're used to using with their own friends and family. So it's really easy for them to adopt, and they quickly pick it up. Another thing to think about is from any of these channels, you can present links to FAQs. Some of you have communities, some of you don't, but if you have a community and you're creating FAQs, you can quickly give your customers a link, and they can go to the community, and then they can see answers that you may have already given all your other, the standard answers that you're able to get in public and give all your other customers. Think about that, and then you can help kind of drive some of that traffic to your community, as well as from Google, right? So if your tags and keywords are updated, you'll show up in Google search results and get your customers to your community. And remember, this is your lowest cost channel, and it can answer the largest percentage of your repeatable questions with little to no agent contact. So if you get a good answer out there, sometimes you don't even need an agent to interact. Here's a closer look at Apple Business Chat. I wanted to kind of show you some of the things that some of our other customers are doing with Apple Business Chat. I know at Sprint, we use Apple Business Chat and we use a lot of these features. It has features like interactive messaging with scheduling. You can do list pickers. You can fully authenticate your customers through there. You can also intercept calls with Chat Suggest, right? So you can see a little Chat Suggest here on the screen. It not only helps you to manage volumes, but it also improves your CSAT, your customer education, and your agent efficiency. And all this doing automation, right? An agent doesn't ever have to talk to a customer, and they get a lot of what they need right there. Okay, so now, drum roll, we want to talk a little bit about Modern Chat. So Modern Chat is a new chat. It's a new Khoros chat, and it's got many of the features and functionalities of synchronous chat, but it also has all of the awesome features of an asynchronous experience. So you can securely chat with your customers on your website with a very modern experience and no limitations on traditional live chat has. Easily transition agent workflows from synchronous to asynchronous. They can handle 20 to 30 concurrent conversations, so that can improve your efficiencies. Offer pre-chat messages. We talked a little bit about that before. If you get something in there like this, you can get some pre-chat messaging going on, and you may find that you're deflecting a lot of calls. Set up proactive rules so you can throttle, talked about that earlier. When your volumes start to spike and you only have a certain number of agents, if you're able to throttle that experience, and you can decide how much volume that you can take and throttle those things up and down. And there's several different ways that you can do that, but think about your pre-chat messages can also help you when throttling. Oh, and then attachments. Like you can easily send attachments, videos, images, links, and it's got like 10 megabytes bidirectionally. So that's something, if you need to send something directly to your customer, it's a way for them to get additional information. Just remember, if you promote messaging, right, most people do not want to wait on hold. So whatever messaging app you choose to use, if you promote it, they're likely to message you long before they call. With that, I am going to turn it over to Jenny.
Thanks, Allison. During a time of crisis, I always reiterate to the brands that I work with that collaboration within your organization is really key because all efforts and actions are intertwined. Outbound marketing drives comments, and every brand response is a press release that can have legal implications. So these are just a few examples of teams you could be working with closely and questions you can be asking them to inform your care teams. Right now, the most crucial team to be in lockstep with is your marketing and PR teams. Are there any proactive efforts such as paid promotion or campaigns launching? Help you gauge what your inbound volume might be, as well as what could be a key driver of conversation. And conversely, based on what you're seeing in the comments, are there any other posts that should be paused or changed? Care drives marketing and marketing drives care, so communication is critical, especially in a crisis. It's also important to have your friends in legal looped in, as they are likely to be able to provide guardrails for your care messaging and help inform those templates that you want to create. So if you're not sure what you can and can't say, better call legal. And depending on your industry, another team could be product. There might be a new launch or change in approach that your care teams would need to be aware of. There could also be growing product feedback trends that your care teams are seeing that should be shared with product or inform any necessary changes. So your communications and your communities are a real-time focus group and a valuable source of feedback that can inform a multitude of areas. So as people on the front lines, it's important that you share what you're seeing with key stakeholders and that you collaborate with teams within your company. Best practices. When moderating your communities during a crisis, these are a few best practices to keep in mind. Now more than ever, it's important to be empathetic with your community. A heated comment could be coming from someone who has a loved one that might be affected. So sometimes you have no idea what's driving the other end of the conversation, so it's important to be thoughtful in each response. It's also important to be transparent when possible and honest. Don't have an answer? It's perfectly okay to say that you don't and that you're working closely with your team and sharing an update. It's important to be human and avoid these canned responses. Messaging, probably one of the most critical resources that you'll need. Navigating a sensitive and unprecedented time isn't the best time to wing it. Make sure you have the information that you need. And if you don't, make sure you know who to reach out to. Prioritization. Focus on pressing questions and be mindful of topics. So if you have sensitive care questions that are pending response, don't focus on lighthearted or brand related items. Focus on what's most important first. Sensitive topics and language. If someone mentions that they're feeling sick, it's best to avoid these sensitive conversations from a brand perspective. Be careful when you engage and be mindful of not using language that can come across as callous, such as using emojis or GIFs. It's also important to walk a fine line with how you mention your products and services. Now isn't an appropriate time to promote yourself, but rather a good time to live your values. For example, don't say that everyone should be taking care of themselves if you're not criticized for doing the very thing in your comments. Share an update if it aligns with your brand and show your values in an authentic but not opportunistic way. It's also important to keep everyone up to date. Care is mission critical during a crisis, and what you see and manage is valuable information, so be sure to share it within your organization. And be comfortable in ambiguity. Your prioritization or current state can change at the drop of a hat, so it's important to be flexible and roll with what comes. It can be difficult at times, but remain positive and keep calm. Lastly, after every crisis, you should debrief with your team. Oftentimes, a sensitive situation can highlight gaps in communications and workflows, a need for different roles or responsibilities. So your crisis plan and playbook should be a living, breathing doc that is never finished and constantly optimized. So if you don't have a crisis plan right now, that's okay, but we recommend that you create one once you do have more time. And now we'll hand it over to Allison for some work implications.
Thanks, Jenny. Okay, so let's talk about remote work. I know this is probably a really big consideration for many of you right now. Call centers are closing. There's a lot of things, crazy things going on. They want people to work remotely. I'll get in. There's a lot of things you need to think about, and I know that this is really tough. I know we had trained some called the SMART team on our Sprint side. We had trained them to. We took people out of our call centers and put them remotely, and then we took people that were doing like social marketing managers and put them remotely, and we put them together and we made them remote workers, and they were a marketing care cross team. There were a lot of challenges on both sides. If you're used to working in the office, it's going to be a big change to work remotely. If you've worked in an office off and on, it's maybe not, if you've done some remote work, it's maybe not such a big deal. But if you take somebody out of a call center, there's a lot of things that you need to consider, just to make sure that you're thinking about all the things that could impact their remote situation, right? Work-life balance, right? Do they have kids, right? They need to think about, do they have kids, and how are they going to work that? Wi-Fi, make sure their Wi-Fi is strong, right? And cloud-based VPNs, you need to make sure you're thinking about that. Data privacy, empathy, and Jenny touched on that, right? Making sure that they're not only empathizing with their customers, but you're empathizing with them, right? Make sure you understand and you're very clear and you keep in touch on how they're doing and how they're feeling. Think about additional trainings for your agents that are dealing with customers. It's going to be very stressful. Remind them that your customers, and again, Jenny said this, I'm going to just reiterate it. Remind them that your customers, you don't know what situation your customer is in. You don't know anything about their family or their situation. So make sure that your agents are thinking about that. And then also, very importantly, remind them that working from home still requires them to be cognizant of customer privacy. I know it's easy when you're at home and you're working on the phone. If you're just in meetings, it's not that big of a deal. But if you're speaking to customers and talking with them about their private account information, they need to be reminded of the customer privacy. For supervisors, think about a staged approach, right? So if you're thinking about moving your teams from call center to remote, maybe not do it all at once. Maybe you start with the top team. If you've got a team of all-stars, maybe you start with that team, or maybe you start with the team that's specifically working on the COVID-19 stuff, right? So think about how you can stage that and walk yourself through ramping up to the point where, if needed, all your agents can work from home. The other thing to consider is Coordinating with legal. I talked about that a little bit in customer privacy, but there's a lot of legal implications, and you have to make sure that you're following all of your legal stuff, right? And then think about adjusting the metrics, right? You need to anticipate that your metrics are going to look differently than they would if the agent was in the call center, right? So working from home, the environment's a little different. It might make you might see an improvement in some of your stats there, but it is a different change, and it is a big adjustment for them to work from home. Coordinate with your IT team, right? Making sure you have your VPNs, all those kinds of things. And if you haven't done so already, make sure that you take advantage of the Khoros Care response templates for common responses, including like links to your community. We talked about that earlier. Just make sure you think about that. Especially, it might make the agents a little easier, quicker to respond, especially in the COVID-19, in your COVID-19 responses. Again, practice empathy. Make sure that, think about your metrics. Make sure you're keeping your regular one-on-ones and you're keeping your touch bases with your team. And remember, these guys are going to be overstressed. More than likely, you might, you're going to get some sort of stress there. So think about maybe having a couple of additional breaks, touching base with them more often during the day, and create an internal chat group. Nothing is better than having your team that you can just chat with, and it kind of makes you feel like you're in that call center environment and you still have a way to connect with your team. And now I'm going to hand it over to Katie.
Thank you so much, Allison. So I just want to reiterate that we know times are crazy. We know there's a ton of anxiety, and we are here to help you, to support you, to offer our expertise in any way to help you be successful. Thank you so much.